You did not create your disease. You did not create your medical condition. We do not create our illnesses. So I want to talk about this today because this is a very common idea that you create your reality. What did you do to cause your disease? What do you need to process to make sure you don't get disease or to get your disease to go away? So first of all, I had my first healing experience when I was 4 years old, and I have been doing healing energy work and working with clients I've been doing healing and energy work for over 50 years now. Okay, and I've worked with literally tens of thousands of people, including being an adjunct with actual medical doctors, working with people from anything from severe psychological diseases all the way through to cancer and deadly illnesses. So I have a lot of experience, and I've been through the entire arc of looking every which way that we can look at disease and illness, whether it's acute or chronic. So whether you have like a raging infection or you have fibromyalgia or something like that. So I want to talk about this because in the healing reality, where like alternative healing circles and also in a lot of new age circles and a lot of spiritual circles, this idea that you have created your illness, you have created your disease, therefore you are responsible for it, you are to blame in essence, is really perpetuated, and it gets a lot of like books on it and talks on it, and a lot of practitioners base their work in this idea that you have somehow caused your illness, and that our work to do is to figure out what you've done to cause it, and then what you need to do, like how you get over your issue so that your illness goes away. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. And I want to talk about that today because I know a lot of really good people who have been taken down very deep rabbit holes trying to heal themselves, i.e. cure their illness by addressing their issues. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But here's the deal. We get sick, A, because we live in bodies. So primarily we live in bodies and things happen when you have a body. B, we aren't in control of everything. So things happen that we don't want to have happen all the time, and that includes to our physical bodies. C, our health is a direct result of the communities within which we belong. I say that again, and this is the biggest one. Our health is a direct result of the communities within which we belong. Right? So if you are, there's like epigenetic reality. So what did your parents and their parents and their parents and their parents do? How were their bodies built? What kinds of trauma or stress did they have? What were their genetic predispositions? What have you inherited? All right. So what have you inherited? That has nothing to do with you. That's just the luck of the draw. That's just what you got. So what have you inherited? The other thing is, how are your needs being met? So stress is a huge factor in inflammation, and inflammation is a huge factor in disease. So if you are stressed, it's not because you get so stressed, it's because we live in a society that fundamentally stresses people out, meaning we are based in independence, where independence means you shouldn't need anybody. So most people, if you ask them, what is it that you need? They go, well, food, water, clothing, air, and I guess love. That's as far as they get, not acknowledgement, encouragement, inclusion, people promoting me, people checking in with me. There are so many needs that are fundamental to what it is to be a person in a body that we have that are not met in modern Western society. People are kind of out there on their own, like pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Deal with your health. If you're sick, it's because you caused it, right? There are these ideas that perpetuate independence, and they're invisible lenses that we look through where we think, well, you're independent, you need to meet your own needs, therefore you caused your disease. Therefore you can cure yourself. Rather than understanding that the wellness of each and every one of us is dependent, like it or not, on the world in which we live and the people we are around and the access we have to clean air, food, water, shelter, community resources, feelings of belonging, feelings of meaning and satisfaction, basic acknowledgement, care, help. Like if you're raising kids and there's just one or two parents in the house raising the kids, that is not working. That is going to stress you out, which is going to cause low-grade inflammation, which is going to lead to chronic disease. Now, you may have genetic predispositions. You may have great access to healthcare. You may have an extraordinary diet. You may have clean water so that you can mitigate the effect that that stress has on you. But it's going to catch up to you at some point. And as you get older, your body is less resilient to the stress that it's under, and those diseases begin to show. The other thing, if you're going to go the psychological route, a lot of people have massive stress in childhood that doesn't manifest in young bodies oftentimes until that person is older. So a lot of people that as adults got on like a personal growth journey or a healing journey or a spiritual journey, as adults are shocked when at 50 years old, they suddenly have cancer or they have some gastrointestinal disorder or they've developed fibromyalgia or whatever it is. Like, I've dealt with my issues. Why am I sick? And people are bewildered. Physical matter, it takes time. Your body is so brilliant. It is so brilliant and it is so resilient that it does the very best that it can to prevent disease in your body. But there's only so much a physical organism can take. So specifically practitioners, and if you are someone who is ill, whether it's chronic or acute, right? And if you're a practitioner who works in any healing capacity, or you have any kind of influence in the way someone thinks about themselves and their illness, it is absolutely imperative that we stop this narrative of what did you do to create your disease? Where is your blind spot? What issues do you still have that need to be healed? It's bullshit and it's extremely harmful. So I see this, I mean, I was like first generation Louise Hay, you can heal your life nonsense, right? I was first generation of people who got a hold of that book, and I was a kid when I got a hold of that book. So I've been around all the Richard Bach stuff. I've been around all of this stuff since it was around, and the way that we think about healing, and all of it is perpetuating this idea that you have more control than you have, your body is not a reality, and that you have created the conditions that you're in mostly by yourself because you didn't react well to the things that happen. You need to make better choices about the things that have happened to you. It is bullshit. I'm not saying you don't have responsibility in your health and your well-being. You absolutely do. Absolutely. All of us are accountable for how we care for our bodies within the context that we live in, right? So if you're poor, or if you live someplace where you don't have access to clean water, for example, or fresh air, or you're in a city and you don't get access to nature and bird sound and things that actually physiologically keep us healthy, right? There's nothing you can do about that. If you don't have money to buy good food, or if you live in a food desert where there's just like fast food and canned food, and you don't have access to fresh food, you're still going to do the best that you can with that, hopefully. But it's also like the educational system. Look at school lunches. School lunches I grew up on were not healthy school lunches, right? But if you look at the entire system, if you look at all the components of the systems within which each and every one of us exists, right? With each and every one of us, you can see that throughout your life, someone other than you, especially when you were younger and you didn't know, dropped the ball either on education or support or basic access to things. And when those things are set up, or when those things are deprived, I don't care how well you think, I don't care how powerful you are, I don't care how much you've worked through your issues, it is very highly likely that you are going to, at some point in the very near future, get sick. I don't care how enlightened you are, I don't care how much you've worked through things, I don't care if you can levitate, you are in a body and you are going to be impacted by the world around you, because that's what it means to be in a body and to be a living organism. We are part of ecosystems, and nothing you can do will insulate you from the ecosystems that you're a part of. Sorry, It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So we're not even like addressing this idea of how did you get sick? Like, what issues do you have that caused your illness? What practitioners are asking you if you're chronically ill, if you're dealing with some kind of disease state, dis-ease, you're in a state of non-ease. What practitioners are asking you, what kind of support do you have? What practitioners are asking, what kind of access are you being given? What kind of help do you need that you're not getting? You know, what kind of stresses do you have that you have acclimated to that you don't even think of as stress? You've been so normalized to these stresses that are so abnormal for your biology. They're so abnormal for a living psychology, right? We have to investigate beyond the person who's ill, so we stop blaming them or indicting them for their illness. And especially people who are dealing with chronic illness or people who are dealing with a very scary acute illness, you do not have the bandwidth or the energy to regroup and now deal with whatever needs to be dealt with so you can get well. You're so far underwater just trying to survive and learn the medical system and being overwhelmed and all the things that go with being ill. It is actually cruel and unkind to work with our clients and say, let's process how you started this. And I can say this because I used to do this to people. Back in the 90s, back in the 80s, back in the 90s, I used to do this to people. It was my lens, right? It was my lens. And I thankfully grew out of it a long time ago because I realized it's very harmful and it makes people feel like shit because it's fundamentally untrue, not because, oh, I can't handle being blamed or I feel so guilty or I feel ashamed that I didn't take better care of myself, but because it is really shitty. It goes against our biology. It goes against everything about how we are wired communally and ecologically wired. It goes against that. It's insulting to that. And so it's cruel to bring this lens and this approach to people with the idea that you can heal after you just deal with your shit better, right? That's not how it works. So I'm not saying absolutes. Let's not be ridiculous. What I'm saying is that in the majority of cases of people that I have come across, what happens is environmental, like cultural, environmental, social factors have accumulated inside of me to the point where I no longer have the ability to make good choices. I'm just trying to survive. And after I am no longer to stay on top of all of the things that I've been dealing with my whole life that have been normalized, that are actually super abnormal and very unhealthy for me, right? Then disease starts to show up in my body. And at that point, I either have bad habits, or I could be doing a lot better, or I've had years of like not brushing my teeth enough, so I get periodontal disease and it causes inflammation in my bloodstream, which causes all these other things. Or I just need fast and easy meals because I'm so exhausted from chronic stress that's never been acknowledged because there were no physical symptoms. I was adapted, right? And so I have these bad habits, or I have these lifestyle adaptations that I've made to just not drown. So a lot of practitioners, a lot of us are getting people kind of at the tail end of their ability to maintain their stress response. And by the time we get them, there's so many bad habits that we're like, oh, it's so obvious, or there's so much unaddressed baggage. We're like, oh, it's so obvious. These are the things. And if you do these things, you'll be better. Yay. And we perpetuate this idea that curing is healing. And we're always seeking this place of like, let's cure you, or let's just get you healthy and forget about your body. It's like, we need to get a lot more integrated. We need to really broaden our lens, and we need to do a lot better as practitioners. This means medical doctors as well, right? This is Western medical practitioners, especially. Like, we need to start seeing the systems people interact in. We need to understand through a lens of a lot more wholeness and integration, all of the things that actually are affecting somebody's wellness, and not treat them as parts and pieces. It's a tired, very, very outdated, incredibly unintelligent approach. So if you are chronically ill, I'm very sorry, right? I've been chronically ill. I know what that's like. I'm very sorry if you're dealing with chronic illness. And if you are a practitioner who deals with illness with people, I really want to encourage you to begin to look at the ways that you are impacted by your environment. Ideally, you have somebody who can be a type of an ally or an advocate for you, who can begin to kind of run interference and make some changes that you might not have the energy for, right? Especially if you're in a deep hole, you're just so screwed by the time you get into a really deep hole if you're chronically ill, just at a social level, because the amount of regrouping and different ways of looking at things and the learning curve for new approaches like boundaries and no longer participating in unhealthy dynamics and asking for your needs to get met, expecting your needs to get met, learning how to advocate for yourself through the medical system, trying to get medical care if you don't have insurance, right? How to balance that and like the choices you have to make if you don't have good medical insurance. And a lot of people who do have medical insurance can't afford it. Their deductible is too high or whatever. So there's just all these ways that people fall through the cracks. It's not just physically. We fall through the cracks socially. We fall through the cracks in our family systems. We fall through the cracks educationally. We fall through the cracks medically. We fall through the cracks culturally in terms of cultural assumptions like independence is a cultural assumption. It's not a fact of life. And independence goes against our fundamental requirement for a healthy biology and a healthy psychology and for us to feel well, right? We need community. We need community. So I'm not doing this video to give you all the solutions and all the help. That's not possible right now. I don't have the bandwidth for that right now. And that's something I would have to plan out and set up. I do want to say, and this is my message with this video, is that our well-being is not up to us. I think if I had to guess a percentage, unless you are really making just horrible choices when you have other choices available to you, right? So with the exception of the person who's making really crappy choices when they have access to all of the best things, besides that, right? I would say probably, and this is really high, about 20% of whatever you're dealing with is because of you and your choices. And that's like probably not even that much. It's probably like, you're maybe like 10%, if that, honestly. And I'm not trying to like let people off the hook or whatever. I'm trying to point to how significant the context within which we exist, how significantly that is actually the main factor of impacting our health and wellness or our disease and lack of wellness. It is enormous. It's enormous. And I've worked with enough people that we go through every iteration of their issues. We go fine-tooth comb through all of their problems and all of their adaptive strategies and all of their tools. And like we do all the upgrades, like they're eating bee pollen and smoothies and getting adequate protein. They're doing all the things, everything's organic and clean and all of the alternative medicine and the adaptogens and the superfoods, and they're moving their bodies and they're setting boundaries and they're using their voices and wah, 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 wah. And then it's like, there's a little improvement after a year, or like I get the most significant symptoms go away and then I just kind of level out and I still feel crappy. It's still no way to live, right? That's because that larger system that all of us are in Western society fundamentally antagonizes us every day. We are bombarded with stress. We're bombarded with environmental stress. We're bombarded with cultural stress. We're bombarded with social stress every single solitary day. And our organisms are not designed to exist within that type of stress without a massive foundation of really healthy community, really strong community where people have our back and watch out and share resources and help each other and encourage and love and are there and share joy and dance and all the things, right? So yeah, we have a ton of stress lacking this foundational community that we're experiencing that stress in. So even if you get your stress dialed as much as you can, you're still bombarded with just cultural, like leave your house, look at a homeless person, you know, go to a grocery store and see all the junk food, like look at all the children who aren't getting good education, listen to the news for 2 seconds, right? Look at the declining like frogs in the world and the declining bee population. You may have even noticed in your own environment that you're not hearing frogs like you did when you were a kid. You're not hearing crickets like you did when you were a kid. You're not hearing these sort of foundational species like you did when you were a kid. Those things, even if you're not consciously registering them, affect you. They affect me. They affect all of us because we're people and we should be affected. And there's no insulation that you get from that. Even if you're cold and you're shut down and you're dissociated, you're still getting bombarded with that. It's hitting you somewhere. You just might not be consciously aware of it. Right? So disease isn't just the physical body, right? There's mental diseases as well. There are energetic diseases as well. I don't like using the term energetic, but there are etheric diseases or whatever as well. There's propensities that we have, obsessions and eating disorders and, all of those things. So please, 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 can we please stop doing this thing of this idea that you created your illness, and if you process yourself to the nth degree, your illness will go away, right? The idea is you created it, heal yourself, the disease goes away. That formula, I'm not saying it doesn't ever work. It works. Lots of things can work. It doesn't mean that they're proof of concept. It means that those are rare exceptions. So when I tell you I have worked with tens of thousands of people, the percentage of people that do this kind of new agey alternative lens formula of like your mind is supreme and your body's just responding to your mind. And if you get your mind straight, your body will follow and you'll be healthy and vibrant the rest of your life. Yay. It's like 1%. That's not proof of concept. That's anomalous. That's rare, weird anomalies. And if we focus on those things, everybody's like, but it worked for this person. Yeah, it doesn't mean it works. It just means something happened and we don't have all the variables of why it worked. We don't know what went on. We literally have no idea how that happened. We just point to this concept and say it's because of that. So if you do that, you'll be fine too. And people are dying because of it. People are suffering with just like this idea of like, God, if I had just enough energy to process my shit so that then this disease could go away and I could be better, and like, what's wrong with me? And don't I love myself? And all these things, want. No. So please, let's stop this nonsense. Please, let's start looking at the larger systems and contexts within which people live, and let us as practitioners become radically more skillful and take ourselves to task to do that work for our clients as much as we can, so that we can find accessible solutions for them and not make them have to work harder when they don't even have the energy to get out of bed, or they don't even have the energy to take care of their kids, or they don't even have the energy to file the paperwork to get the thing that they need to help them. All right? Let's just do better. Let's think better, right? Let's broaden our perspective and accept the reality that we are biological organisms that exist within an ecosystem. We need to be relational and we need to be ecosystemic in our approach, or else we are doing harm. And at the very least, the very best we're doing is dropping the ball and giving our clients the short end of the stick and wasting their time and money and energy that they probably really don't have, right? So none of this solo, independent, you created it, you can fix it, control, hyper-independence mythology. Because it's like, it's a mythology and it's bullshit and it's weird. Like, let's stop doing that and face the fact that we have bodies. And even if you are the most supported, nourished person in the world, and you have the best culture and the best community and the best of all the things, you're still in a body. And something's going to happen to it at some point. And if you die in old age, peacefully in your sleep with no disease, I would love that for every single person. I would love that. It's not going to happen for most of us, but I would love that. That would be very nice. It's not going to happen for most of us for all the reasons that I said at the beginning of this video. Relational and ecosystemic, and we need to begin to look for resources that support that reality, because that is reality. The rest of this stuff is opinion, wishful thinking, magical thinking, disconnected thinking, perpetuating cultural mythology that actually causes people to be sick, It's not good. So we want to, use discernment and find that balance where we are encouraging accountability in our clients, but not in a way where they're being blamed. There's a way to hold people accountable where you also give them the support and the structure and encouragement that they need to feel empowered by what that accountability implies. Like, I can do some things versus I caused this, right? Those are two really different places to be. Really different places to be. And one gives you energy and the other is just defeating. And it makes you feel bad. Like, nobody feels good by the idea of like, oh, I caused this. I'm so excited. That means I can cure it. I used to say that shit to people. Well, if you created this, it means you could cure it. Yay. No, 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 no. And I understand the intent for help, and I respect that. I really do. And I care about all of the caring hearts who just really genuinely want to help people. And I'm not admonishing anybody. I'm admonishing the ideas that we're perpetuating that are false, that do not actually help people. That's what I'm taking a hit at. That's what I'm taking the swing at. I'm not taking the swing at the people who practice those ideas, okay? Please understand that, and I mean that very sincerely. I'm just saying we need to do better. We need to think differently, and we need to think in a way that is in alignment with what is true and actual for what we are as organisms in ecologies, in bodies. That will never change. We are that. As long as we're here in these bodies, we exist in ecosystems, and we have to look at those ecosystems and understand that our bodies are like the canary in the coal mine of the ecosystems we live in. All right. Our bodies are not because we fucked up somehow or because we didn't, we're still mad at our moms or something. It's not like that. Right. Those things are good to look at as a tiny part of a much larger picture. So I'm not saying throw out the baby with the bathwater. Right. But it's just when you look at, like, say somebody's angry at their mom and they never worked through that anger. Okay. If you understand that, not from a lens of you created this and you're not from a control, hyper independence, you manifested this. So if we don't look at that lens, we look at the exact same information. You have anger toward your mom. We look at the exact same information, but we get rid of that lens that pathologizes people and we become curious, right? So, oh, you have anger toward your mom. Okay. Anger in Chinese medicine is a condition of a hot, congested liver, right? So your liver's tight, it's the organ of anger and resentment. So maybe I get really curious about, are you drinking coffee? Are you drinking alcohol? Are you deficient in B vitamins? Are you hydrated? Are you eating salty, oily, spicy foods in excess? Are you doing things to create a congested liver? This is energetic liver. So are you doing things to create the conditions for anger to arise in your body? And if we clear those things out, what happens to the anger, right? This thing with your mom, like, how far back does it go? If you're able to look at lineages energetically, look at lineages by going down threads and seeing ancestrally, did you maybe inherit this? Are you deficient in nutrients? Like, we look at all of the other reasons physiologically and culturally and epigenetically, so ancestrally, of why that might be there before we ever say, you need to process your anger, you have issues with your mom. Okay. If you have a client who has anger issues and they're drinking coffee and you're processing anger with them, you guys aren't going to really get very far. And it's just going to seem like they just are really holding on tight to that issue. It's just really buried, or it's just much bigger than they realized, or maybe they had something horrible that they don't remember, or, blah, 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 blah. Like, just stop drinking coffee and give that 6 weeks, and then bring in some nourishing foods, some softening, nourishing foods, and then see what the anger does before you pathologize the person, right? That's an example of just barely getting a little more ecosystemic, barely getting a little more relational, just getting into relationship with your body and your emotions. Besides, it's just your mind, it's your psychology, it's all here. Just integrate the body and the mind a little bit. That's one little step into getting more ecologically oriented, ecosystemically oriented, relationally oriented, right? And then go another step and another step until you have a grasp of a larger picture and you're belonging within that picture, meaning the way that that picture impacts you, so that you can then be creative and strategic about the way that you approach whatever somebody's illness might be. Because some people are in situations where that environment cannot change. So you go, well, how can we support you while you're going through this, right? What can we do now, given that these variables aren't going to move, given that you are never going to have health care, given that your child is a jerk and they live at home and you can't afford to take them someplace or kick them out or whatever, you guys are kind of trapped. Like, that's a real thing. We get trapped in situations for reasons that have nothing to do with us. So we have to just account for these things. We have to be open to these things, be curious and be creative and really think about supporting within a much larger system to see what dials we might be able to adjust, to see what might be available to us in a way that genuinely supports the people we're helping or genuinely supports yourself. Okay. So that was my rant. I hope something in this was useful for you. This is, you know, big for me because I've been doing this work for so very long. And I just see this all the time. And I see people who, you know, I have clients who come in just defeated because they've been to so many practitioners and everyone's telling them the same thing, which is like, you cause this. And like, I really want to know what I'm doing. I can't find it. It must be so buried. Right. And I'm like, oh, it's these 3 things. And they do those 3 things and the issue goes away. And it's literally tens of thousands of dollars that they've wasted and years that they've wasted because they have been trying to pathologize themselves so hard. They believe it so hard and they haven't had a bigger picture. So don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to your clients if that's relevant for you. And let's just at least begin to explore this. Don't freak out. This is your whole modality. Don't freak out. Okay. Just like, you learned what you know, you can learn new stuff. And as you learn better, you do better. And that's just the way life is, right? Like I said, I used to do this to people all the time and now I don't. And hopefully you live long enough for that to be the case. And it just becomes, because your caring heart really wants to genuinely help people, you'll get over yourself and you'll educate yourself, and that will motivate you and fuel your passion for learning new and thinking new and doing different with people. Okay. So don't get despondent. It's always overwhelming. Just being alive is always overwhelming, but time will pass and you can spend that time well, and it will impact you and you'll do better. And the people around you will. And what a nice thing for a client to know a practitioner who cares so much that they would either be upset or that they would be even more determined to do better for them. Okay. We're all doing the best that we can. We really are. So, all right, I'm going to stop now. Thank you if you've made it this far, and I hope you have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.